Hi, friends and friends of friends. Welcome to the Still Podcast Author Series Season 2. This season's guests are authors who write books for children, the young readers to teenagers, and even those who are still young at heart. During each episode, you will learn more about the writer and their books. I bet you will find a new author and new books to love. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoy an episode, please leave a comment or respond to one of the poll questions at the end of an episode, or follow me on one of my social accounts. And of course, tune in next time. So, welcome to the Still Podcast Author Series. Thank you, Kandi J, Wyatt, so much for joining me.
Good to be here.
It looks like you've published a ton of books. So it looks like there's 3 series and maybe 5 standalones.
There's definitely 3 series.
Okay.
And at least 4 standalones.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, somewhere in there.
So, with you're a fantasy writer, and of course, with fantasy, there's all those names that I never know if I'm pronouncing them correctly.
Yes.
We've got Journey from Skioria.
Yep.
The Apprentice of Amandine Dub.
Dupe, I think.
Dupe.
It's an Irish word. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's definitely where all my ancestors are from, is Ireland and Scotland.
Yes.
So, cool. T for Dragons, The One Who Sees Me, and To Save a Race.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I was forgetting the children's book, T for Dragons, in my account. So, yeah.
You write fantasy for young adults, and it's family friendly. I do believe you say. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The family-friendly term came about after doing a Comic-Con where I was standing next to another author, H.L. Burke, and she kept hearing me say, yeah, this book is good for kids 8 to 88, the Dragon Courage series, because some of my biggest fans are the grandmas or the aunts who get it for the kids, read it first, and then by about book 4, I'm no longer signing it for the kids, I'm signing it for them. And so that author said, wait a minute, you need to change that to just family friendly, because everything that you're writing is family friendly. It might be age appropriate based on which one. Like my newest series is more young adult, whereas some of my beginning stuff was more of the middle grade. And so, and then the picture book, designed for the little kids, but adults enjoy it as well.
Well, I know, and they say that there's a whole bunch of adults reading young adult fiction. So
very much so.
Excellent. And can you tell me what you're working on right now?
Wow. About 3 different projects. One is in editing, as in I just got it back last week from my editor. And so this morning was literally going through comments to go, okay, well, wait a minute. We now have this issue. How can we adjust that? That one is a King David retelling with dragons and a twist. And so it fits into the 4 Stars Over Ardat's Sovereign series. Then before that, I was self-editing Christian's Rise, which will be the next one that goes out to my editor in November. And that one is based in the same world, where it's a tilted planet world, and one side is always dark, one side's always light. And it's in the dark side. And we have a 18-year-old son of the chief who doesn't think he's ready to become chief. And there's no way, he can't live up. And he hears all the voices in his head telling him he can't, to the point where he wants to silence the voices, and he's willing to listen to the one that says he shouldn't be on this. The colony is better off without him. And so it delves into some really deep stuff. And then actually writing is one that takes my most recently published main character, Married from Divided, and she's now at 21 instead of 17, and she's queen, and the weather patterns are changing, but they're finding out it's due to dragons as well as a um mage who is controlling those dragons. And so they're going to have to go and fight. And so that one, they've managed to make it to the point where they've actually seen the bad guy. And I'm about 50,000 words in. So my little short books that I started with have definitely started to grow.
Awesome. Okay, so you're you're also a teacher. And so
Mhm.
as a teacher, you're going to totally understand when I say I'm a very visual person. And
Yes.
so I'm just going to clarify. It sounds like you're working on three different stories.
Yeah.
Okay. At
So,
like one time. That's amazing.
well, so how I do it is there's the one I'm writing, there's the one usually that's in an edit, and then there's the ones that are being marketed and whatnot. And so I kind of hit a pause on the writing for a bit, go into editing mode, then come back in. Depends on how the writing goes along. And this one, it kind of hit a natural just stop sign. You're not going any further for a while until I started to figure it out. And about that time was when I heard back from my editor, oh, here, it's ready to come back at you. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was during that time that I was going back through and doing the self-editing for the other as well. So Christian's Rise had been written in 21. So it's already, first drafts have gone through. It's the going back through and editing it.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. And as much as I want to delve into that process, um, so the Christian's Rise, is that part of the 4 stars over our debts?
It's in that world, and so it's going to have it'll be a duology. Journeys is its name, and both of it will feature two young adult men trying to figure out who they are and where they fit in their world.
Okay. So I'm getting this kind of continual theme of identity and self-identity and just self-discovery, which is like
Yep.
right at that's my like happy place. I love reading those
Yes.
stories.
Yep, that's a lot of them are those coming of age, and the trying to figure out where I fit in the world.
Excellent. And so then going back to your King David retelling
Mhm.
with a twist with dragons,
Yeah,
that's the one you're currently writing,
editing.
editing. So you've written it, and you're editing it. Okay.
Mhm.
I've one quick question. When you're
Nope.
editing, like I call it revisions because when I edit, I'm like changing like whole chunks of the story. So I'm just
Mhm.
curious, is that true for you as well? When you say editing, you're like,
Um, Depends. So there's my self-editing process is I'll read through it and I'll figure out where there are words I'm repeating, are the things that need to adjust. I don't tend to see the major chunks. When it heads to my editor, if she sees like divided, we ended up rearranging whole chapters and areas. This one, there was just one. And I'm coming close to that point where I remember she said, keeps saying, okay, that's this chapter, but it's really this. And I'm like, wait, why is it that way? Because I sent this off to her several months ago. And so right now it's okay, here's a couple words here, flow, um, as well as um, sometimes there are some chunks where she was like, wait a minute, we suddenly just come upon this scene. There's no setup for it. You need to go back in and adjust what is happening here. And so over the course of the last couple days, we've gone back and forth, little snippets, nope, bigger snippet, as we keep adding to it and tweaking it to get it to be where it needs to be.
okay. So you really work kind of as a team with your editor. Okay.
Exactly.
So the King David retelling that you're
Mhm.
doing the edits on, do you have any favorite characters from that story or from that series?
Wow. There are so many. For I would say I love Carta. who is basically the Jonathan, Shauna Her, who's our David, because he just has, especially when he's younger, he has a very open, he's just out and about with the pucklings. They're the fuzzy alpaca blended in a duck body. Characters that he herds around. And one of them is colored like a mallard and just always is getting into trouble. And so those are kind of fun at the beginning. And then as he goes along, Duro, I don't know if there's a biblical equivalent to Duro. He's when David is sent, or Shanaher is sent out away from uh Rian, who's the chieftain, wants basically to send him out where I'm going to get rid of you because it's so bad out there, you're just going to die in battle and we're done and over with. Shanaher wanders into this town and he's met by a gruff guy who's like, yeah, right, you know anything. You're just a young kid. And they fight off a band of the Humming Taj. And in that process, Duro comes around and he becomes his most steady, strongest defender. And so Duro, and then in that same, the clan leader from there, Patrick. And um, that's one that kind of becomes in the actual King David retelling is like the priests of Nob that are killed off later on. And so when I read that part of the story as it later on comes into fulfillment, it was definitely tear-jerking for me to go, oh my, because, I don't tell the actual storyline, but one of my favorite characters no longer gets to continue in the book. And so, yeah.
I'm very much, when I read as a reader, I want those like powerful, strong characters that I can connect to and that I can read to. And so I always want to know, tell me about your characters. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. You mentioned that you're going to be doing a Kickstarter campaign. Can you give me just some details about that?
Okay, so Kickstarter is designed to be able to help bring to life projects, whether that's games, whether that's, craft projects, you name it, it's out there. And the indie world for books have really started to get onto that. Um, I backed one and trying to look where it's all the way up there, so I can't pull it. I came out with this gorgeous hardbound book, and it was so fun to be part of it, to hear her say, okay, hey, guess what? We funded this in under an hour. Now what? We've got 3 weeks. Where can we make this go? And in the process, she wasn't going to have the gilt embossed hardback. But by the end, that's what I got, as well as some colored maps inside and the black and white illustrations at the beginning of each chapter based on who that point of view character was. So it was really fun. So I'm planning on doing that with this whole story. So when it comes out to the public, it'll be 2 books, Ascended, Appointed and Ascended. In the Kickstarter, it's going to be the duology in one and will be called Bonded Crowns. And yeah, so looking forward to seeing what all we're going to end up. My goal is to gain people who love reading, who love books, who also love the family friendly style that goes with it. Um, and so planning on doing that about, I don't know if November is going to be right, if it'll be ready by October or so. So following that, if you follow my newsletters, I'll be able to have that as well as on my social media.
Okay, that's perfect. So I actually just backed my first Kickstarter campaign last week, but I had decided when I got her information, like, oh, okay, I will send her $50 to contribute to this Kickstarter campaign, thinking that that's what it was. I was just going to donate $50. And so I sign up and I was just like, oh, wait, for $10, I can get the ebook. for another $5, I can get her memoir ebook and another, and I wound up getting like 4 different ebooks and then donating an extra $16 just to get to that 50 that I initially. So I went in thinking I was just going to back up, send money to this favorite author of mine, and I wound up getting all these goodies from it. I was just like, this is awesome. And I love that you're going to do a Kickstarter, and definitely I'll sign up for your newsletter so that I can help be part of Team Kandi. Kandi, now, do you say Kandi J Wyatt or is it just Kandi Wyatt?
So, as my author name, it's Kandi J. Wyatt because there is another Kandi Wyatt spelled exactly the same. That's a boxer from Canada. In
Okay.
fact, this year I received a Instagram from a message from someone I didn't know, and I'm like, what is this? And I see it's a video, and I'm like, I don't want to. And then I caught a little bit. Oh, I bet he thought he had the boxer and was sending from her recent fight. And I'm like, nope, I'm not that person. I might write about a fight, but I don't get in there and fight.
Yeah. I'm curious about Kandi the writer. So where do you get your inspiration behind your books?
Just about anywhere. Stories come from anywhere and everywhere. Some of my most recent ones from songs that we've sung at church. And it's like, oh, that has a seed of a story idea. Can I bring it out and about? And so there's been several of those as well.
Awesome. And I love that. I love when writers are like, the stories come from everywhere. You can tell that you're a really creative person, right? With a great imagination. So I love that. I've got to be honest, you're big inspiration to me. I've only published, I'm at the very beginning of my publishing career. I've published one, but you're a teacher as well. So what does a day look like for you?
I get up about 5 o'clock in the morning if it's a school day and get ready. And by 6:15, I'm down in my office having some quiet time and then at least a half hour of writing before I go ahead. And I'm fortunate that usually my husband's fixing breakfast for me. If he's gone, then that, half hour is cut a little bit shorter as I go and fix my own breakfast, get lunch, and head out the door. I get back about 4 o'clock, and that's where the day varies. I could end up going to a photo session with my husband, who's a photographer, or could end up able to sit down and either work on some marketing, work on bills, or continue doing some writing, depending on where my mental energy is. I might end up working instead on the art part of it and the cover art and whatnot. So it just kind of depends there. And then once dinner is ready, I try to make the rest of the day being family time.
Wow. Okay. I'm trying to think, can I get up at 5 a.m. right now? I push that sleep alarm. That would be
Yeah,
a good way to sneak in 30 minutes into the day.
yeah. And
Okay.
basically that started when I was commuting a full hour away. And
Oh,
so I naturally had to get up at that time. And then it was like, well, can I maybe no time really to try to write with that schedule, having to leave at 6:30 in the morning.
yeah.
But then later on it was like, oh, I got the job here. I don't have to be there, leave the house till 7:15. Oh,
Nice.
but no, I should stay, getting in that same schedule.
Uh, Nice. Yeah, you have a routine.
So another reluctant reader. My first year at the school, I had a study hall period, and I had these sixth grade boys, and they would do anything but read. No, no way. And as I'm driving over the bridge, um, north of town, and it's like, what would happen if there was a dragon flying along that coast? Oh, cool. Wait a minute. I wonder if I write those boys into a story, if they would read it. And so those boys and a couple other students from that year, and the one I learned she was not like that except for in my class, but that's how I wrote her in, is how I knew her. And so they became the characters, different names, but it was our school, our community. And when it was published, or as it was getting close to publishing, I was considering, what do I do for my cover art? Can I get them? So I, knew the one mom, and just offhandedly, what would you feel if an author contacted you saying they would like to have use your kid as part of the cover art? She's like, oh no, that'd be creepy. Oh, okay. I'll keep writing. I'll keep figuring this out. And so as I got that second book almost done, I knew it was then, okay, we're going to be able to get this trilogy done. I sent out a joint Facebook message to the kids that I had, to the parents that I had, as friends, and said, I wrote this, guys. I'm wondering if you guys can get your parents' permission to be on the cover. We'd like to be able to have, the one with the boys on the beach with the dragon egg, and then the girls with the horses, and, making it the pasture. And that mom who had said that would be really strange and weird, and I'd be weirded out, was like, oh, sure. Like, what made the difference? Oh, it's you. It's
She
not just
didn't
some
get that.
random author, it's you.
Mhm.
Like, okay. So, fast forward sophomore year, the main character comes in, the one whose mom was at first weirded out if some random author would do that. He comes in, that bell rang. Okay, yeah. I had to quit reading. Oh, what were you reading? And this sounds so much like, I could just hear these voices. That's him, and that's this person. And it was like, yes, I accomplished my goal. This winter, the next one. So they are now turning 21. The next one sent me a message. It's a good day to curl up with a book and read, because it's rainy outside, and he had his mug of tea and my book on the table as a picture for me to have, and said, yep, halfway through it's good. And I was like, yes, it worked. They are reading. So yeah.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for writing for reluctant readers in the first place, giving them these
Mhm.
accessible books and inspire them to read. Because I, as an English teacher, I really appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
So I have two more questions. One,
Okay.
for new readers who haven't read any of your books, where would you recommend they start?
Good question. Depends on their age,
Okay.
and what they kind of like. So there's, for our young readers, I have Dragon's Courage series, with starts with Dragon's Future. Each one has a little seed of a theme and carries over some character. So they aren't a continuous story arc for 7 books. It's more so characters that keep going through. So it's all finished in one. If you have reluctant readers, especially junior high boys,
Mhm.
that's the one that I would send them to. I had a 6th grader boy who I was teaching language arts at that time with them, and was doing the drop everything and read. And he was not wanting to read. And I'm like, you just haven't found the book you like. Well, I'll read yours, because he had read the first one earlier that summer. I'm like, okay. The next day he had book 2 in his hand. So definitely reluctant readers. If you like Dragon Riders, that's the series as well. They're not in depth, they're not complex, they're very simple stories. But I don't dumb down the vocabulary for them. Next one, Myth Coast Adventures. If you like urban fantasy, portal fantasy, ET, it's ET meets How to Train Your Dragon. 8th graders find a dragon egg on the beach, a unicorn in the horse pasture, and then they follow Bigfoot through the rift along with the government agent and a poacher who wants all the magic. Book 1, I couldn't tell who really was the bad guy. By book 2, we know who the bad guy is. And so it's a fun romp, but it also starts seeing some of my more advanced writing style. Sovereigns is definitely more of your high schooler, young adult. Um, Eventually they are married, it fades to black, but there's some of those relationship tensions that start happening. And my more the changing in my writing, I'm starting to see it, especially as we get going through once we hit it Ascended, which is the second book in this King David retelling. I could tell as I read it, it's like, this is so different. It's more advanced, and it's more depth to it. As in, with Divided, my husband's like, you write simple stuff. Wait a minute. But if you didn't, this is what would happen. And he was like, at the end, that's what happened. And he was like, whoa, you threw in some complexity there. I like it. So it's starting to evolve. Then the standalones. To say to Save a Race is a Queen Esther retelling set in a kind of a steampunk world. And so in my mind, I saw it as a Studio Ghibli movie happening out as I wrote it. And then The One Who Sees Me is a retelling of Hagar's story, set in more of a kingdom fantasy. So no magic, but a medieval world. It's sitting in historical fiction, and that's how my editor had me do it. But I'm still, in my mind, it wasn't a specific world. It was more of just this medieval place. Journey from Theoria is again for those younger readers. In my mind, it was like The Secret Garden type of a story. The editor that I had at the time had me adjust it to more modernized. I may still go back and put it to the original. My daughter says the original was better. So we'll kind of see where that goes. Some of that also hits, what all can my editor do? How much can I handle? So maybe if I hit a writing stump, I'll go back to do that, like I did in 2020, where I only published one book.
Okay, awesome. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You can see why I had to ask. I mean, where to
Yes.
begin? But I have to admit, the Christian steampunk biblical retelling of Queen Esther's story to save a race, I'm like, okay, that kind of hits a whole bunch of different feels. I'm like, ooh,
Yes.
I might start there. How's the best way to find you? Because I know there's, authors have a lot of different ways to be found at this point, but I definitely want to be able to sign up for your Kickstarter when that happens.
Okay. So my newsletter is probably the one that I do most often. I've got about once a week, I send one out. So there's the first of the month that is book news and book recommendations, etc. The other three tend to be some sort of encouragement for hope and light. This month, actually, I need to do that tomorrow. I'm going to be telling the story that I got to act out and hear last Sunday for my birthday. My family sent me on a scavenger hunt in the form of a story, and role playing with them being, my sons being the bad guys and one of them being the narrator. And so I'm going to break that up for this month because it was just such a fun story in and of itself. Then Instagram is probably my next best, where I will post things, and then updates I will do on Facebook as well. But I'm a big believer on just your website and the newsletter, that I don't have to be drug into trying to keep up on social media.
Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed learning more about your writing process as well as all these wonderful books you have. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to subscribe, like us, rate us. Look forward to seeing you next time.